When a man notices that you suddenly stop talking to him, his mind will immediately begin racing with questions. Silence, especially when unexpected, has a powerful effect on human psychology, and for men, this can be particularly unsettling. At first, he may brush it off, assuming you're just busy or preoccupied with something else. But as the silence lingers, doubt begins to creep in. He starts wondering what went wrong, whether he did something to upset you, and if this silence is intentional or just a coincidence. Men by nature are problem solvers. When faced with a situation they don't understand, they instinctively try to analyze it. He will replay past conversations, looking for any signs or red flags he may have missed. Did he say something offensive? Was there a shift in your tone the last time you spoke? Did he fail to show enough interest, or worse, take you for granted? His mind becomes a battlefield, struggling between logic and emotion. On one hand, he tells himself that everything is fine and he shouldn't overthink it. On the other, his emotions betray him, making him feel uneasy about your silence. In the initial phase, he may not act on these thoughts. Men are often taught to appear strong, unaffected, and in control of their emotions. He may try to suppress his concern, convincing himself that you'll reach out when you're ready. But as time passes and the silence continues, his perception shifts. What once seemed like a brief pause in communication now feels like a deliberate act. The uncertainty fuels his curiosity, making him want to know what's really going on. If he has any genuine feelings for you, this silence will start to feel unbearable. At this stage, he will begin seeking validation from external sources. He might ask mutual friends if you've mentioned anything about him. He might check your social media, looking for clues about your mood, your whereabouts, or whether you've been engaging with others but ignoring him. If he sees you posting, smiling, or interacting with others while giving him no attention, it will only deepen his frustration and confusion. He will wonder if you are deliberately trying to send a message, whether your silence is a test, a punishment, or a sign that you've lost interest. This is where his emotional state becomes unpredictable. If he truly values you, his worry will transform into concern, and he may begin to regret any mistakes he made. He might even start to realize things about your dynamic that he had previously ignored. Perhaps he was not as attentive as he should have been. Maybe he failed to appreciate the effort you put into conversations. Or he took your presence for granted. Your absence forces him to reflect on your value, something he may not have done when you were consistently available. But if his feelings for you were not deep, he may take a different route. Instead of introspection, he might justify your silence as unnecessary drama or an attempt to manipulate him. A man who wasn't emotionally invested might see this as an opportunity to detach completely, assuming that if you're not talking to him, then you must not care. In such cases, he might choose to mirror your silence, either as a defense mechanism or out of pure disinterest. For the man who does care, however, the silence will become increasingly difficult to handle. He might try to test the waters by subtly reaching out, perhaps by reacting to your posts, sending a lighthearted message, or even making an excuse to start a conversation. He wants to know if you're upset, if you still care, or if this silence is meant to create distance between you. The longer the silence lasts, the more urgent his need for clarity becomes. He will either act upon his feelings or struggle with the emotional burden of uncertainty. Ultimately, your silence serves as a mirror for his emotions. It reveals his level of interest, his ability to handle emotional situations, and his willingness to take responsibility. If he truly values you, your absence will not go unnoticed. It will stir something inside him, making him realize what he stands to lose. And in that moment of realization, he will have to decide. Will he step up and make an effort? Or will he let the silence grow until it turns into a permanent void? When a man notices your silence, his initial response may be confusion, but as time passes, he begins to feel the weight of your absence. At first, he might try to dismiss it, telling himself that you're just busy or that it's not a big deal. But as the hours or days stretch on without a word from you, his emotions begin to shift. He starts wondering why you aren't reaching out, and that's when uncertainty sets in. A man who is used to your attention, your texts, and your presence now finds himself in unfamiliar territory. One where he is no longer a priority. At this point, his mind begins crafting different scenarios. Is this a test? Did he do something wrong? Has your interest in him faded? The lack of communication creates a vacuum, and in that space, his emotions start to build. Even if he's the kind of man who typically doesn't express his feelings openly, This silence forces him to confront emotions he may have ignored before. He might recall past conversations, looking for any hints or signs that you were pulling away. But to answer your, maybe there were moments when you seemed distant, times when he failed to pay attention, or subtle cues he overlooked. Now, in the silence, those moments start to make sense. As his thoughts race, he begins to feel an internal struggle. Part of him wants to reach out to get clarity, but another part hesitates. He may worry that if he contacts you first, he'll seem too eager or weak. Some men, especially those who are used to being pursued, struggle with the idea of making the first move. They believe that if a woman is truly interested, she will eventually come back on her own. So he might hold back, waiting to see if you'll break the silence first. But as more time passes, that strategy starts to feel risky. If he genuinely cares about you, the thought of losing you becomes unsettling. He begins to replay the moments you shared, the laughter, the connection, and the way you made him feel. He realizes that your absence is not something he wants to get used to. It's in this moment of realization that his pride starts to break. He may have convinced himself that he could stay distant, that he could wait you out, but now he's questioning whether that's really the right move. Setting goals for yourself that is inspiring and kind of gutsy, this is when his actions start to shift. He might begin looking for indirect ways to reestablish a connection. Maybe he suddenly likes one of your old posts, hoping it grabs your attention. Perhaps he sends a casual message, something vague like, "Hey, hope you're doing well," just to test the waters. If he's feeling more bold, he might ask directly, "Hey, I noticed you've been quiet. Everything okay?" Either way, the silence has triggered something inside him, forcing him to act in ways he didn't anticipate. The way he chooses to react in this moment speaks volumes. A man who truly values you will not let the silence stretch on for too long. He will reach out, not because he feels obligated, but because he genuinely wants to understand what's going on. He won't play mind games or let his pride get in the way of something important. But if he chooses to ignore the silence completely, if he makes no effort to check in or see what's happening, that also tells you something. It reveals where you truly stand in his life. For some men, this realization comes with regret. They may start thinking about the times they took your attention for granted. They remember the texts they ignored, the conversations they brushed off, or the times they assumed you would always be there. And now, as they sit in silence, they begin to feel the impact of their own actions. Regret has a way of making people see things more clearly, and if he realizes that he played a role in this distance, he may start wishing he had handled things differently. For others, the silence is a wake-up call. It forces them to confront their own feelings, to ask themselves if they truly want to lose this connection. If a man has been unsure about his emotions, your silence may be the push he needed to make a decision. He may have been avoiding commitment, hesitant to express how he really feels. But now that you're no longer making an effort, he has to decide. Does he want to risk losing you, or is it time for him to step up? At the end of the day, silence is powerful. It reveals truths that words often hide. A man's reaction to your silence will tell you everything you need to know about his level of interest, his emotional maturity, and his willingness to make an effort. If he cares, he will find a way to break the silence. If he doesn't, he will let it continue. Either way, you gain the clarity you need. When a man realizes that you are no longer engaging with him, that your energy has shifted, and that your presence in his life is no longer the same, his mind will inevitably begin to process this change. He may have been comfortable in the dynamic where you were always available, always responding, always showing interest. But now, the silence forces him to reevaluate everything. And one of the first things that happens in his mind is that he starts questioning his importance in your life. At first, he may try to rationalize it. He might tell himself that you're just busy, that you're going through something personal, or that it's only temporary. He will assume that things will return to normal soon, that you'll eventually reach out, that the pattern you both had will resume. This belief allows him to hold on to a sense of control, thinking that he doesn't need to take any action just yet. But as time passes and you continue to remain distant, that confidence starts to crack. He starts to realize that something is actually changing, and that realization brings discomfort. This is where a crucial shift happens. A man's pride often plays a major role in how he processes emotional situations, especially if he is not used to being the one who has to chase. If he has always been in control, if he has always had the upper hand in interactions, then your distance will feel foreign to him. He will struggle with the fact that he is no longer the center of your attention, And that struggle leads to frustration. He may start wondering if you are doing this on purpose, if you are testing him, or if there is someone else occupying your time. The uncertainty will eat at him because human nature resists the feeling of being replaced or overlooked. Even if he acted indifferent in the past, now that you are no longer present in the same way, he feels the shift deeply. At this stage, his reaction depends on the kind of man he is. Some men will try to regain control by becoming distant themselves, acting as if they don't care. They will suppress their emotions, convincing themselves that if you are pulling away, then they should do the same. This is a defense mechanism, a way to avoid vulnerability. Instead of addressing the situation head on, they try to protect their ego by acting uninterested. They may even go out of their way to post on social media showing that they are unbothered, hoping that you notice. But underneath it all, they are watching to see if you react. They are paying attention, waiting to see if their tactic works. Other men, however, will take a more direct approach. They will start making an effort to re-engage, but often in subtle ways at first. He may suddenly respond to old messages, like your posts, or find an excuse to reach out. This isn't always because he realizes he has deep feelings. Sometimes, it's simply because he doesn't want to lose the sense of importance he had in your life. He may not have fully appreciated your presence before, but now that you are not engaging the same way, he starts to recognize the void. This is when he starts thinking about whether he took you for granted, whether he made a mistake by not investing more effort when he had the chance. If he genuinely values you, if he truly sees you as someone important in his life, this is the moment where he will make a clear decision. He will either choose to step up, to communicate openly, and to address the situation with maturity, or he will let his pride dictate his actions. And this is where you see his true nature. Because a man who is emotionally mature, who respects the connection you shared, will not allow silence to persist indefinitely. He will recognize that if he wants you in his life, he needs to put in the effort. However, if he chooses to do nothing, if he allows the distance to remain and makes no effort to bridge the gap, that tells you everything you need to know. It shows you that he was comfortable with your presence when it was convenient for him, but he was never willing to fight for it when it mattered. And that realization is powerful because it gives you the clarity to move forward, with or without him. At the end of the day, when you stop talking to a man, his reaction reveals the truth. It shows whether he truly valued you or whether he simply enjoyed the attention you gave him. If he wants to keep you in his life, he will make that clear. If he doesn't, then you'll know that your energy was being spent in the wrong place. Either way, his response, or lack of it, gives you the answer you need. When a man realizes that you have completely withdrawn, that you are no longer available in the way you once were, and that the energy you used to give him is gone, his reaction is often deeply revealing. Some men, as we've discussed, will immediately reach out, seeking to restore the connection because they recognize its value. Others will remain distant, trapped by their own pride or fear of rejection. But then there is a distinct group, those who begin to overanalyze everything, stuck in a cycle of indecision, unsure of how to respond. This type of man starts thinking deeply about the situation, questioning everything about his past behavior, your intentions, and whether he should make a move or simply let things be. He replays old conversations in his head, trying to determine if he missed a sign that you were pulling away. He wonders if he did something wrong or if you lost interest for reasons that have nothing to do with him. And this internal battle keeps him stuck, hesitant to take action. He might even talk to his friends about it, seeking validation or advice on what to do next. Some will tell him to move on, while others might encourage him to reach out. But instead of making a decision, he remains trapped in his own analysis, fearing that if he contacts you, he might look desperate, but also fearing that if he does nothing, he might lose you completely. This hesitation is rooted in uncertainty. He doesn't know how you feel, and the unknown is unsettling. At this stage, you may start to notice small signals from him. He might not directly message you, but he will linger in the background of your life. He may start watching your social media stories more often, liking old posts, or even commenting on things he never used to notice before. It's his way of testing the waters without fully committing to action. He wants to see if you'll respond, if you'll give him a sign that he still has a chance. Okay? This passive approach is an attempt to gauge whether he should make a move or retreat further. But what happens when you don't react, when you don't play into his silent attempts to reconnect? This is when his frustration grows. He realizes that waiting around for you to make the first move is not working. He starts to feel the weight of your absence more intensely, and the fear of losing you for good starts to creep in. It is at this point that his emotions become overwhelming, forcing him to take one of two paths. Either he finally reaches out and makes his intentions clear, or he convinces himself that it's too late and lets his pride keep him from doing anything at all. If he does decide to reach out, the way he does it says a lot about his mindset. Some men will try to act casual, pretending as if nothing happened, sending a simple, "Hey, how have you been?" as if they weren't affected by the distance. Others will take a more direct approach, admitting that they've noticed the change and asking if something is wrong. And then there are those who, out of desperation, will try to provoke a reaction. Maybe by posting something designed to make you jealous, or by engaging with someone new just to see if you notice. But if he doesn't reach out at all, if he remains in silence despite the turmoil in his mind, that tells you something even more important. It shows that no matter how much he thought about you, no matter how much he wanted to say something, his pride, fear, or indecision was greater than his desire to keep you in his life. And that realization is crucial because it reminds you that a man who truly values you will not let his ego stand in the way. He will not allow distance to turn into permanent silence if he genuinely cares. Ultimately, his actions, or lack of them, give you clarity. If he makes an effort, you will see it. If he remains distant, you will know where you stand. Either way, you are no longer in a position of waiting or wondering because his response reveals the truth. And with that truth, you gain the power to move forward with confidence, knowing that you have made the right choice by stepping back and allowing his real feelings to surface. You want to be persuaded or convinced to care more, which is fine.